Lesson 1.6, Relations. Let me give you some definitions before we start to study what a relation is. The coordinate plane. The coordinate plane is a plane formed by the intersection of two number lines. The two number lines are the x-axis, which is horizontal, and the y-axis, which is vertical. So the x-axis is the one that goes from left to right, and the y-axis goes up and down. The two axes meet at the origin. The origin is point 0, 0. The x value is 0 and the y-axis and the y value is 0. So it is the point where the axes meet. And I'll just indicate that by highlighting it for you on my coordinate plane. An ordered pair. An ordered pair are the coordinates of a point written as follows. In parentheses, you have the x value, comma, the y value. So the x coordinate is the horizontal placement of the point, whereas the y coordinate is the vertical placement of the point. For example, if we're looking at the point that I have drawn on my coordinate plane, we first start at the origin and we would move to the right 2 places. That's why the x is positive 2. And we would move up 3 places, positive 3, so that the y is at 3. So this point is at 2, 3. I know that this is a review, but it's never hurts to go through this again just to remind you what a coordinate plane is, how to write an ordered pair, how to find a point on a plane. Okay, let's continue. A set of ordered pairs is called a relation. Any set of ordered pairs is a relation. And you can express a relation or represent a relation in several ways. You can express a relation as an equation, as a table, as a graph, or in a mapping. Okay, so here's a relation. Here's a set of ordered pairs. Because it's a set of ordered pairs, I am going to put it in set notation. So we have 3 pairs. We have 1, 2, negative 2, 4, and 0, negative 3. So I'm giving you 3 ways that we can represent the same relation. One is as a table. Okay, where we have x's to the left and y's on the right. 1, 2, negative 2 with 4, and 0 with negative 3. So one way that we can do this is as a table of values, it's called. Another way that we can represent the same exact set of ordered pairs is graphing points on a line, and there they are. So those 3 points are also a way to express a relation. And the third way is using a mapping. Mapping is where we have the members of the x, the domain, and the y, the range, and we will write them, and then we will draw an arrow between the domain and the range, matching and mapping out which goes with which. So 1 with 2, negative 2 with 4, and 0 with, this should be negative 3. Okay, so that's just to illustrate to you 3 ways, or 4 different ways: a list of ordered pairs, a table, a graph, and mapping. Ways to represent a relation. Okay? All right, a little more in terms of definition. The domain of a relation refers to the x-coordinate or the input. The range refers to the y-coordinate or the output. You're just going to have to memorize that. Domain is the x-coordinate, range is the y-coordinate. So if you are asked to determine the domain and the range for the following relation, what you're asked to do is to place in set notation the members of the domain and the members of the range. Now, normally when we're asked to do that, we will write those in order, from least to greatest, and we'll never repeat a member of the domain or the range. Okay, so in this case, my domain is made up of -4, 0, 3, and 4. And my range, the members of my range, are -3, 1, and 2. And I understand you may be looking at this and saying, but -3 is there twice, but once we list it as a member of the range, then it's already there. It's already part of our set. We don't need to repeat it. And notice also that they're in order from least to greatest. Okay. In a relation, the value of the variable that determines the output is the independent variable. That's the input or the domain. The variable whose value is determined by the independent variable is called the dependent variable or the output. That is also known as the range. So we have the domain, which is the independent variable, and we have the range, which is the dependent variable. Okay, let's put this into practice. For example, it says identify the independent and the dependent variables of each relation. So let's look at number 1. The air pressure inside a tire increases with the temperature. So we have two variables here. The air pressure is one of the variables, and the other variable is the temperature. So which is independent and which is dependent? Which one depends on the other? So I would say that the independent variable is the temperature. And depending on the temperature and the change in temperature, that causes an increase or decrease in the air pressure of the tire. So the temperature is your independent variable. The dependent variable is the air pressure. Okay, number 2. As the amount of rain decreases, so does the water level of the river. So pause the video now. Think about it. Which of those two variables, the amount of rain and the water level of the river, those are the two variables, which one, change in one depends on the change of the other? Which is independent and which is dependent? I'm going to pause the video. You go ahead and figure it out, then come back and check your answer. Well, clearly the independent variable is the amount of rain. And depending on how much it rains, the water level will increase or decrease. Okay. Exercise 1A. I want you to do exercise 1A, where you are asked to express the relation as a table, a graph, and a mapping. Okay, so go ahead and take some time to do that. And then 1B also, determine the domain and the range of the relation. So you're going to write a list of the domain members and of the range members. And remember that these are listed from least to greatest, and we're not going to repeat any of the members of the domain or the range. Okay, also for independent practice, you're going to do numbers 1, 2, and 3. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. Identify the independent and dependent variables for each relation, and then describe what's happening in each graph. So for each one, you need to identify which is the independent variable, which is the dependent variable, and then describe what's going on in each graph. Okay, so we will continue practicing how to represent relations in different ways, how to identify dependent and independent variables tomorrow as we work on this. Okay, God bless you. Have a great night.